Okay, g'day, I'm Scott Poynton, and here we are for another Earthworm podcast. I have a very special guest with me here today. It's Malcolm Rands, who's the founder and CEO of EcoStore, which is a New Zealand company doing fascinating things. They are a TFT member. We're working with them on palm oil, and I caught up with Malcolm yesterday here in Melbourne when we were together for a meeting on palm oil, and I was fascinated by Malcolm's story, and so I thought we'd get together and have a little discussion. So Malcolm, welcome to the Earthworm podcast.
Thanks, Scott.
What I was really interested in was how you came to this. You told a bit about that in the presentation yesterday with your journey through the permaculture and your eco village there in New Zealand. So I wondered if you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, it actually started when, like a good Kiwi, I did my OE. I was away from New Zealand for almost 4 years. Came back, moved back in with my mum, as you do. And I just had this yearning to do something good for her. So for no particular reason, I decided I'd dig her a veggie garden in her backyard.
A veggie patch.
Yeah, a veggie patch, yeah. And I just went along to the library because I've always learnt by doing my own research, mainly reading. And the book that fell into my hand was Organic Gardening. And this is in 1981.
How old were you then?
I was about 25, 26. And ever since that, I've had a garden every year since then. And I got bigger and bigger ambitions. I moved up to the north of New Zealand to work in the community arts. And a group of us from that Community Arts Council started New Zealand and almost the world's first permaculture eco-village. And permaculture, for those that don't know, is around the idea that you set up food forests often using plants that will pretty much look after themselves. The same sort of quality as weeds, and that you don't have to water them or feed them or spray them because they really want to belong there. And in the end, in a perfect system, you never get there, but this is what you're aiming for, you could get it pumping out food, you could walk away for 10 years, come back and it would still be pumping out food without you. Quite a different way how we're doing food at present.
It doesn't need any human input. Once you've set it up, it runs on its own.
That's right. I mean, nature seems to do pretty well without humans, Forests are full of food and we just have to, learn the lessons and copy the great lessons. And when people think about village, straight away they start thinking of hippies and communes, and we learnt what not to do from the hippies and communes. But the idea around village for us is that in the new world, if you're in the country, you're often in this isolated farmhouse all by yourself. Whereas in most of the world, if you live in the countryside, you live in a village. Houses clustered around a green. And this is what we've done at Mamaki, our village. And the great thing about that is that if you walk out of your home at Mamaki, you often bump into the neighbours because they're so close. And that's where all the action happens. Win-win, spur of the moment. What are you doing? Oh, I'm going down the beach. Oh, do you want to take my kids? I'm going to town. I'm working on this program. Oh, maybe I can help you. And we end up, people think if you join with people, you end up in endless meetings. We've got it down to just 4 meetings a year.
How many people in the village, Malcolm?
It comes and goes. It flexes probably around full shop with everyone there. It'd be about 30 people.
Okay. And you also told a nice story about how you used to be able to sleep in the morning because you knew the little ones were fine. Your daughter, I think you said, 1.5 years old or something.
It was the perfect place to raise children because they became a tribe. Mainly my older daughter loved looking after the little ones, so by the time my youngest daughter, Keva, was 1.5, we could sleep in because they'd just get themselves up, go out the door, and you knew they were in a completely safe environment. All the neighbours were like aunts and uncles that feed them, look after them, and they'd run around a big tribe. It was superb.
You're seeing that, now that your kids are getting older, moving into university, are you seeing them sort of coping with life and the challenges of life better, do you think, than other kids who haven't had the eco-village experience?
Well, it's interesting, like the oldest child that's come through the village now is in her mid-30s, and we've still got the youngest ones is probably getting up to about 9 or so quite a big gap there, but they've all done extremely well. It's quite amazing, and they've all been, top of class, top of New Zealand, very creative. A lot of them have gone into the arts and gone onto it. It's been a fabulous upbringing for the children.
And it's still going, the village?
Oh yes, Melanie and I had to leave the village for a while. We started our business there, but we had to move to Auckland to expand it. But now we're in a lovely situation that every Thursday night, Melanie and I jump in the Prius and drive back to the village. Spend Friday working in my office in the village, which is just a flash name for a desk in the bedroom. And then Saturday and Sunday I'm back to being a peasant labourer, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, it takes the stress away.
Oh, it's I'm not a gym bunny, and I get all the exercise I need, and it's just gardening is just such a wonderful mindfulness. You know, your hands in the soil, the word grounding. It's just so good for me.
So from there, you set up the Eco Store. Tell us the story behind that.
Well, there's a couple of things. One, I wanted to have a completely new way of looking at capitalism, looking how not-for-profits work, because I'd been working all my life in not-for-profits up to that stage, and many problems I came, and I said, why not a brand new system? And the system was, which I did a mind map in 1993, which we're still working on today at EcoStore, where you have EcoStore as a capitalist business, can turn on a dime, things can happen in a hurry, but with ethics, and at arm's length, it supports a foundation, which can be slow and consensual and can take on problems that no one else wants to do because their funding is secure. They don't have to keep on going back for funding all the time. And so a couple of projects are coming to fruition now. I started them 7 years ago. How many people have the luxury of that?
No, the funding, you've got to be fighting for funding every day, writing reports here and there.
Oh yes, and often the governance of not-for-profits is sort of like all the people in the town, the do-gooders, they get dragged onto every committee. Right. They don't even want to be there, they're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and often they haven't read the minutes until the night of the meeting, and that's your boss. It's the most dysfunctional boss you can have. And so I just wanted to completely change how that looked.
Yeah, look, you also said something yesterday in your presentation which really resonated with me, was how you want the world to be in 20 years' time, and you're planning for that. And just share me a little bit of your thoughts there.
Well, I've had this philosophy for a long time that it's probably from my youth. I was a great science fiction reader, to tell the truth, would be one of the things. And my idea is that what you do is you think 20 years in advance, and you think, what would a perfect world look like? You know, and down to quite a lot of detail, like really visualize it, maybe draw pictures of it. And then once you've got that, just start doing it right now. Don't wait for it to happen. Just start doing exactly what you'll be doing in 20 years' time. So I call it imagine the future and do it now.
Yeah, and so the Eco Store has grown, and here we are in your office, and really interesting products. And what's the philosophy of the Eco Store?
As I said, we live in a village and everyone's got their own lives and their own jobs. We do some things together, and what we did right back in '86 is we challenged ourselves. The back boundary is a national park, and so all the water coming into our village is probably as pure as any on the planet. And we said, wouldn't it be wonderful if the water leaving our village was just as pure as the water coming in? And I must admit, we're a little bit up ourselves. We thought, you know, we're these shit hot bloody organic farmers, we'll show the local car cockies how to do it, you know, a bit of pride there. And our land practices have been great, but what we hadn't thought of back, and in the 80s not many organics people had, is what about the water coming out of our house? There's no municipal drain for it to go down. We had to look after that. So we started looking at the dish and the laundry and the spray and wipe and the shampoo. There's more toxic chemicals inside our precious homes than what we'd been saying don't put on the land. Completely unregulated, most of them secret, all of them untested. And so we'd all started looking for alternatives. So then when I wanted a business idea, I said if we were doing this, maybe the rest of the world would like this too. So 8 years later, in '93, I put together the first ever mail order catalogue, gathered all the best products from around New Zealand into one mail order catalogue, and started sending it out.
So at this stage you weren't making your own products, or had you started doing that?
No, what I did is that it's interesting in life, the more you narrow your vision in that you know exactly what you want. See, the trouble is the world's got so much information, you don't think, but when you know exactly what you want, and I've always known exactly what I don't want in my products. That's where the no nasty chemicals come from. That's been my genius. So then suddenly these places started popping out. They'd always been there, but there'd be so much noise, and so I'd get a little pet soap from up north down there, and there was someone in an old milking factory in the Waikato was making dishwashing liquid. I put them, they're doing it already. I got them to make a second run for me with my label on it, and I started that way. Later on, we were let down a few times by the suppliers, not actually being completely truthful. So in the end, we ended up with our own formulations. And then even later than that, some of the manufacturers, contract manufacturers, weren't doing the right thing. So now we've got our own factory. And one day we might even have our own palm plantations.
Anything's possible. So you mentioned palm oil, and of course that's what we're working on together with you guys. And of course we met with Lorinda yesterday. Tell us the story of how you came to be concerned about your palm oil.
I'm deeply embedded in the green world, so it was no surprise when, even back in the 90s, people started talking about what was starting to happen in Indonesia and Malaysia. And I was on the voting assembly for Greenpeace, so I was involved with this sort of world. So I started looking what could the alternatives be. We weren't manufacturing our own stuff, so the supply chains wasn't so immediate. So I did notice when the RSPO first started, and EcoStore, because of that, we wanted to be involved with what was happening. So we were the first manufacturer and retailer in Australasia to join the RSPO. We did that in 2007.
So that's the Round Table on Sustainable Palm Oil.
And since then, we have just been, as soon as anything's come available, we'll use it. But the trouble with us in the end is that if it was food grade, we probably would have been certified years ago, because that's just a simple piece of oil, you know where it comes from. It's almost like organics. Mm-hmm. But the trouble with what we're doing, we're getting down to molecules.
You're right, the derivatives and...
That's right, derivatives. And these are sort of traded on the world market. They're actually not even palm by the time we get to us. Sometimes it's mixtures of palm and coconut and other things put together, sloshing around. Because, dishwashing liquid, for example, it's the cheapest thing on the planet, You can get a litre of it for $1.99, so you're not got a high-priced liquid here, So they use the cheapest end-of-line thing. So, that's been our challenge, but we are working on it all the time. And now, working alongside the TFT, it's going to make it even better for us.
Yeah, so we came to work together because you were concerned that even with RSPO certification, there could be links to deforestation and other practices. And so that's where you came to us to see if we could work together and sort that out, yeah?
We do a lot of work, but we're not experts. We don't have people on the ground in Southeast Asia. And so everyone knows with the RSPO, they're not perfect by any means, and that's probably being charitable. But having said that, I know why, because they're trying to change the whole industry, so they are trying to get the laggards to be part of them as well. So I do understand where they're coming from, but we didn't want the bottom standard, we want the top standard.
Yeah. Okay, so look, we're working on palm oil. You're doing lots of stuff. You mentioned yesterday about your sugar bottles and sugar-based plastics and things like this. It seems the company's really constantly innovating and coming up with new ideas, and you've got a really open mind to innovation. So where do you think you're going to be in 20 years? Where do you think the company's going to be in 20 years?
Well, I've never been, and people think this is nuts, I've never been a fan of sustainability. I think it's a boring word. It's not an inspiring word. To me, it's that let's not make things any worse. I'm more interested in let's make things better. Yeah. I'm really interested in the idea of restoration. At the moment, believe it or not, we are working on some of our formulas that once they go down the drain, they'll go into the municipal system and help that municipal system to clean itself up and maybe turn it into a fertiliser. So instead of it being dumped in the ocean where it's a pollution, you could actually make that pollution a food from plants, which then maybe, again, you could make back into surfactants. Yeah. Just a complete circle.
Closed loop.
A closed loop, yes, indeed, because it's full of goodies, this stuff. It's just that a lot of pollution is actually too much goodness.
Yeah, it's too many nutrients in a lot of ways,
exactly
isn't it?
Right.
Yeah,
too many nutrients, yeah, exactly. I remember, it's probably changed now, that the Chinese used to think Westerners were crazy. They'd take brilliant drinking water, mix it with the best fertiliser on the planet, which is human excrement, and turn it into pollution.
Get your head around that.
That's right. It's just crazy. So and in the future we'll be looking at making everything a closed loop. The whole cradle to cradle idea that at the end of a life of a product, it actually becomes the food or the source material for another product. Yes.
The innovation that you're working on. We're here. You've got 5 or 6 people in the office here.
Yeah.
Where do these ideas come from, and do you link in with universities, and how do you take this stuff forward? It's really, I see your products there, and there's a hell of a lot of stuff there. It's not that you just got one bottle here. There's a lot of innovation happening here. How do you do it?
I've just got a curious mind. I just for some, I don't know why, I think just a month or so ago, I actually worked out that I probably do 14 hours a week of research. That's on my own. And I'm just curious about what's happening, and I just want to keep up with them. So I'm one of these muggins who actually every time someone's got a newsletter which is slightly in my field, I'll put my name down for it. So you don't want to see my inbox or my email.
Well, you get all these thousands of
and
what could be out.
And so I'll just scan them, and if something pings me, I'll go deep diving, and I'll do it 7 days a week. I'll spend an hour or so every day, and it's because I enjoy it. I'm not being a martyr here. I've just got a fascinating mind.
seeing what other people are doing. And so do you rely on your gut? I mean, when you read these things, you must read so much. I mean, do you have a real sense of relying on that intuition and saying, hey, there's something interesting in that? Is that how you capture it? I mean,
I think it's definitely a lot of intuition, a lot of instinct, but I think it also just goes back to your values. You know, if you're very clear what you want in life and no compromise, as I said, things they become obvious, and you wonder why everyone misses them.
That's a lovely place to finish up the conversation, because, as you know, we talk about values all the time in TFT, and it seems to me, Malcolm, you have lived your life based on this pretty interesting and pretty good set of values, and you've been very kind to give me a copy of your book, and we'll let people know that it's out there, because I think that it's called Ecoman, Malcolm Rands, Ecoman, From a Garage in Northland to a Pioneering Global Brand.
And it's quite a cheap download now online, so yeah.
Well, we'll let people know where they can get it, because I think it's a fascinating story. We're very pleased and proud to be working with you, so good on you, mate.
Thanks a lot. I'm really pleased to find you guys. You came on just when we needed you. Thank you very much.